Apple showed off the Vision Pro in June 2023, and the idea was that it was going to get a whole bunch of developers really excited about building virtual reality and augmented reality apps. This is going to be a high-end device, so it was going to be people who are going to be willing to pay for applications that added value to this VR and AR experience. But that hasn't happened. And the problem for Apple today is if the flywheel doesn't get going, if people aren't buying devices, if developers aren't building apps for those devices, how in the world do you get more devices out there? It's a chicken and egg problem. And this is something that Apple hasn't really had to deal with its other devices in the past. The iPhone was obviously one of the most popular products and most successful products we have ever seen in technology. Even the Apple Watch, which doesn't have a ton of apps, has millions of users. So the Apple Vision Pro has really been a flop in a lot of ways. And the pace of development from an app perspective is just going to exacerbate that. No one is going to buy a device for $3,500 or even a much lower price device if there are no apps. But Meta has actually answered this question. And so I think it's interesting to look at what Apple is doing, what they could be doing, and what Meta is actually doing better. Now, Meta is obviously burning billions of dollars trying to build out reality labs, but there's at least a strategy behind what they're doing from an app perspective. And the problem is, I think at the end of the day, Apple may have already lost the VR and AR battle to Meta and any upstarts that potentially come along. But I'm going to dig into all that today. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. Let's get to some of the latest news from Apple. Now, Apple announced, this was from February 2024, that there were 600 new apps built for the Vision Pro. Some of those are going to be internally developed. Some of those are going to be developed by external developers. But the idea was to get people excited about building apps for the Vision Pro App Store. Remember when the iPhone launched, there was an app for that. That was really the big thing. And the idea for Apple would be to build the devices. You attract developers. That's going to attract more users. It's going to attract more developers. That flywheel, and Apple's sitting in the middle, not only selling devices, but also taking 30% cut from the developers when there's a transaction that's made. So this is what Apple wants to get started. That's what they want to say, that there's more and more apps. The problem is the pace of app development has absolutely cratered. And not only third-party apps, but also native apps, apps that Apple is developing as they move their focus to artificial intelligence. So understandable that you can't do everything all at once, but they're leaving the Vision Pro to basically die. This is the number of apps. Earlier this year, January, there was nearly 300 apps. February, same pace. That dropped off the map in March, April. May, you go to September, and there was 6 other apps developed, and it looks like 2 native apps. So just an anemic pace of development for Apple for the Vision Pro. And this is what a dying product looks like. Apple cannot continue charging $3,500 for the Vision Pro and have no new apps for the product. This is going to be the next HomePod if that's the case. Now, there are a couple of ways that they could answer this. They could introduce a much lower price point product that could potentially attract more developers. They could build more of their own applications. I know that I have heard this, is that a lot of the applications that were built out by Apple themselves aren't really finished. They're not really products that you would go buy a Vision Pro for. Or they could buy some of the best developers in virtual reality and augmented reality. The irony here is that Meta got there first. Meta has been acquiring companies in VR and AR for quite a while. And I think this is actually the right strategy. Mark Zuckerberg is showing exactly what they needed to do to get VR and AR off the ground from a developer perspective. In 2019, Facebook, as it was called then, bought Beat Saber. This was by far the most popular product in virtual reality. They followed that by buying Ready at Dawn, which is a creator of another couple of popular games. This was just 2 of some of the major acquisitions that Meta and that Facebook, or Meta, or Oculus, you may call it, made back in those days to try to get as much content as they possibly could on Oculus devices. In some cases, those were exclusives, so trying to pull people into the ecosystem. In other cases, they sold to all other headset developers, but really Meta is where everything went. They've also been buying hardware companies to make their products better. Control Labs was more than $1 billion acquisition. That is now the device that's going to be controlling the glasses, the Orion glasses that they introduced a couple of weeks ago. That's what's going to allow you to pinch and control that device if your hands are not even in sight of the cameras themselves. So there was really a vision here. Hey, there's a whole ecosystem that we need, particularly on the app side. We need things for people to actually do in these devices. And so we got to buy those companies and we have to build that content ourselves or nurture it ourselves to make sure that it's on our devices. Apple has not done that with its headsets. It basically expected developers to build stuff just because it was Apple. That's obviously not been the correct strategy in VR and AR. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. So where does Apple go from here? This is really the million-dollar question if they want to get into the virtual reality and augmented reality landscape. Obviously, you need to have price points come down. I think one of the things that Meta has really proven over time is those high-end headsets, those really expensive headsets, just aren't something that people are going to buy, especially when it's virtual reality and you're maybe not going to use that device even every week or every month. It's going to be something you're going to use periodically. Now, augmented reality glasses, maybe a little bit of a different story, but the technology probably isn't there for another 5 to 10 years at least to make that a really big market. So how do you nurture things in the meantime? I think what Apple needs to do is really build out their developer ecosystem. They need to introduce a much lower price point product, maybe even lose money on products. This is one of the things that Apple's just not very good at. They typically have very high margins on their hardware, no matter what they're selling. They don't want to be a company that has a loss leader, but they might have to do that in virtual reality to spur that ecosystem. Get millions of devices into people's hands, maybe charge $200, $300, $400 for them, but make it a great experience. And then attract those developers who are going to build applications for virtual reality or augmented reality. It certainly seems that Apple is gearing much more towards AR. They have had the AR kit in devices like iPhones for years now, but they didn't really leverage that with the Vision Pro because that was a virtual reality device. There is no way to see the outside world with that device. Now that's okay, but you still need people building content for your devices, whether you're going to be selling whether your ultimate vision is doing an AR pair of glasses or whether you're going to stick in the VR world. So I think Apple might need to buy some developers. They're going to certainly have to put more resources in developing content for themselves, but they're going to have to answer this hardware question, and they may just need to have prizes or funds that developers can access to just build stuff for the Vision Pro or for any other Apple device. This should be the kind of product where we're just throwing stuff at the wall. Apple has the money to help developers fund that. Now it just has to have the will to actually make that happen. I certainly hope they do it because Meta can't be the only player in this game, but it's certainly looking like whatever prize there is in virtual reality and augmented reality, Meta is going to capture it because they're the only ones that actually have a viable vision for what this industry looks like in the future. But let me know what you think about Apple's moves in VR and AR and the Vision Pro. I thought that chart with the number of apps that were launched on a monthly basis was just shocking. Shocking that almost no one is building anything for the Vision Pro today. But you step back and look at it from a developer's perspective. If there's not a lot of people in headsets and they're not even using their headsets all that much, why would you build something that they could? Why would you spend time, energy, and money building something for that headset? This is a real problem for Apple. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.